our first ever unedited special edition of Green Chair Conversations.
Woo!
I'm actually sitting in the original green chair here with you today. So if you're watching, forgive it stains. If you're listening, forgive it squeaks because it's right on cue. That is going to happen. This chair has been around a long time, but I am here today with Executive Director of Ministry as well as Pastor Brian Albrecht. In this episode, we will share some stories, discuss some lessons we have learned along the way, and get behind the scenes on how Green Chair got started. And yes, I said we. I'm going to be completely honest and transparent with you. This episode is way outside my comfort zone, but I think it's going to be a fun one, and we get to highlight and celebrate Green Chair's 12th episode. So I'm really excited about it here with you today. So let's get to it and meet Brian Albrecht in the original Green Chair. Well, you're not in the original. I'm in the original. I'm in the original.
That's the original one.
That's the new, updated Green Chair.
You say it has stains on it and such?
Yeah, that's why I got this blanket. Normally I have a blanket all over it, but it's an old chair. I mean, look, this is gonna happen the whole episode, the squeakiness.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have
creaking.
I'm gonna have to sit still the whole time. Okay, I want to start with you because that's number one, my comfort zone. But I love, like, when we started this whole thing, I remember coming to your office and saying, hey, I want to have a conversation about how you went to seminary because you thought, I'm going to maybe do ministry in some sort of form, and you just like fell in love with video. Okay, tell us that story because that's a really cool one to me.
Okay, so this is going super way back.
Okay.
My story starts in Bulgaria. No joke, it does.
Oh, really?
I was like literally there. I was like I was on a missions trip with this group of people, and there was this one night, I knew I was going to get married later that summer, and I was at this cafe, and I was kind of thinking through what happens next. I was doing ministry, very excited about ministry and all that, but didn't know what the next step was, and bottom line is seminary was the thing that was the next thing. Came back, got married, we were gung-ho, and we took off, and I had no real plan beyond that. Like, I had no idea what was going to happen. My dad was pastor in kind of a small to mid-sized church. To be honest, what I saw of his life was not something that was super interesting to me. It wasn't bad. It was just didn't seem interesting. So during seminary, a number of things happened.
Okay, where'd you go? Was it Dallas?
To Dallas Theological Seminary. Yeah. Okay. So the first thing that happened was my wife was an actress. Still is an actress. She's but she was doing a bunch of community theater. So I was hanging out with these people, and these people were just very, very fun. So we had a great time hanging out. At the same time, we started going to a church that was huge in the arts. So they had people from, again, this is in Dallas, it was an Irving Bible Church. They had actors and actresses from Dallas Theater Center. It was very common for them to have them. We had a sculptor.
That's really neat.
Yeah, totally. She was unbelievable. She crafted the cross that was hanging in the space. And we also had a number of visual artists that were very, very, so you had people that painted and people. So we incorporated all those different things and brought them into the service, and it was very, very fun. And this was while I was at seminary, so I was experiencing a little bit of that, kind of through her. But the other person that was big too was Professor Reg Grant. So he's a friend of mine, became a good friend of mine. I literally talked to him last week. This is like 20 years.
Oh, that's really fun.
Yeah,
that's really
just a good guy. But he got me onto sets. So he, back then, Wishbone, the little Dougie. So you remember the little dog, little Wishbone thing? Right. He had the black spots, so he's a cute little guy. So they shot all of that stuff in Dallas, and his good buddy was the director there. So he would get me on these sets, and we did some things too that were fun, but basically I shadowed directors during that period of time. And what I realized was they were doing this one piece on Anne Frank, and they were actually basically in a concentration camp in this one scene, and they had me behind the director. And on this one scene, they had a certain amount of fog that was being pushed into this room, and it got crazy in the middle of the shot. And I thought to myself as I'm standing there in the background, I'm like, when they pushed the camera through at this one point in time, it just didn't come through clearly what they were trying to get out of the Anne Frank character. And immediately the guy said, cut, right in the middle of the scene. He goes, you know what, there's too much fog in here. It's getting in the way of us when we get the camera over there on Anne Frank. Like, he said literally what was already in my mind.
Oh, wow.
And what I realized was there was sort of a one-to-one correlation between how he saw things and the way I was seeing them, that there was sort of we were just seeing the same sorts of things.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I realized this was a cool thing, and I was going to pursue it more. And
You had a niche for
that
it.
really started. And then the arts in general and how they had influenced my own life, and knowing how much they influenced mine, knowing that it will influence other people too.
Yeah.
So that's really where it all kind of started.
Yeah, and that's really neat too, because you kind of marry the like theological training, especially now, right? Like that has so influenced. How many years you been at Hope? Sorry, I put you on the spot.
17.
It's a lot of
almost,
years.
Yeah.
So that has really influenced heavily like what we do within our video ministry
Totally.
and the way we tell stories and everything that we do.
Can I tell you one story?
Yes.
This is going to sound, this could sound egotistical. I'm going to say it anyway.
You're going to say it anyway.
So
You have
well,
to.
and you can.
We can't edit.
You can
This
tell
is
me.
unedited.
Totally, this is unedited, so I don't have any. Whatever comes out of my. No, so I've been here for a while. I can't remember. I mean, we've produced hundreds and hundreds of little short videos on all kinds of different subjects, but it could have been about an addict who found health. We did one on a guy who had attempted suicide and what that looked like on the other side. The broken marriage. It was just so many marriages that we've seen that have come together, just very, very beautifully, right?
Yeah.
So. Lost my train of thought. What was I just talking about? What was I just?
You're talking.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this is over this 15-year period of time. Well, during that same period of time, there was one moment where there was a group here in town who was trying to raise funds to get a major motion picture out into the public, and so we were all working together, and I spent hundreds of hours trying to help out with this project, and in the end. It didn't go through because we couldn't raise the development costs. It was a big number.
Yeah.
But it was a 1-year period of time, and at that moment in time, my heart was very much for this thing to get done.
Yeah,
And when it didn't happen,
yeah.
I was extremely disappointed.
Yeah.
Fast forward like five years, what I realized was that part of the calling on my life was to be making little films. It wasn't about making the big film.
That's really cool.
It was about telling stories that really changed people's lives.
That's
and
really cool.
That was the story for me. The story for
Yeah.
me was not to be doing that thing. It was to be doing the work that I've been a part of here.
That's really cool.
And work with all these people here too that have been great friends. And,
That's really cool. I love that. Yeah.
Me too. Okay, so let's flip this around.
Okay.
Because it's unedited and this is like, a whole different thing today.
That makes me so nervous, though. It's
Okay,
super
no,
weird for me.
So,
but this is my safety zone.
Yeah, totally. So this is a new thing here, right?
This is a new thing.
Yes. Okay. So
Green
you're
chair.
doing digital online pastor. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about this green chair thing. Tell me about this idea. How did this all come together?
Okay, so I was just thinking about this. This is like, I mean, how much time do we really have, to talk about this? But, I mean, truthfully, like, the conception of this goes back to, like, 6 years ago, I guess. Part of it for me is this passion on meeting people where they're at, right? Just really, instead of saying, like, be here at this time, do this at this time, and come, like, as a church, right, come to us, which is nothing wrong with that. We need small groups. We need to meet. We need to gather. We need to be together. But I just feel like over the years, times have kind of changed. We're all experiencing it now. But, I mean, if you back this up, so about 5 years ago, I'm working under women's ministry. I'm working with the moms.
Yeah.
I'm navigating that as well, right? I'm ordained. I just got ordained. I'm a pastor. And I have kids.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to navigate this.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff.
Yes.
But what I found was, in my own personal life, was, it was a hard niche for working moms.
Yeah.
A lot of things are geared at the 11 a.m., 10:30 slot. And I thought, this is a really hard time to include women and moms into something.
My wife struggled with that.
Yeah.
She works.
And that
she's
was
career.
that. Yeah. And so that was the kind of conception of it. But I kind of feel like even backing up further, and we're not going to get into all of that, but like even when I was working with students in the youth ministry, what I found that God has done over the years is I've stepped into these spaces and I've thought, I wish I had this when I was their age, or I wish I had this when I was growing up. And I remember when I was working with Brett, we were doing, I was in college working with students.
Yep.
I was an intern.
Your office was in Jane's old office, yes.
Yeah, that is right.
I totally remember.
Yeah, way over there.
Yep.
And so I'm working here, And I'm like, man, I wish there was something for college students. And Brett's like, yeah, let's make it happen. And so we kind of started trying to talk through, how do we do something for college students? So what does that look like? And it's really just because I was like, I really wish I had that. Back it up even further, when I started doing youth ministry, I was like, man, I wish I had a group of people, a small group that I went through high school with, and we could do ministry with, or just kind of had a group. And Brett was like, well, why don't you start with these 9th grade girls? This was when I was on staff here. Start with this group of 9th grade girls and see them all the way through college. And so I stayed with the same group of people all the way to college. That's like, some of them, they were my wedding. It was really cool.
That is crazy.
Years later, I mean, we really invested in each other's lives. But that started because I wish I had that, right? I didn't have that in a space. So I think the underlying thing is, I think God has been preparing me for this for a while, and then the like kind of conception of it happens with the working moms thing, is thinking, well, I wish there was something where I could get connected in some sort of way. But what I found, though, is then working and being a mom, like sometimes it's still even hard to go do something else, right? It's still hard. Like, you're working all day. Then I want to be with my kids. I want to be with my husband. Like, I want to be with my family. And so I don't even know if I want to go then to another meeting, but I still want a sense of community, and how can I do that? And what I found is, where was I learning and growing and listening? I'm listening on podcasts. I'm listening on, I'm getting all of this information online that I'm learning, and that's kind of propelling me through motherhood, truthfully, is I'm finding that elsewhere. And so for me, I was like, man, I want Hope to be in that space. You know, I want Hope to be in a space where we can say, we have a voice in that realm, and we're kind of helping propel people, even if we can't all be together in person. But what's crazy to think about this is that was pre-COVID.
No, that's
what's
you're talking,
so wild to me.
I think that's what's so funny about it is to think that you are thinking that in the same context where COVID comes in, where church has to be virtual.
Yeah, and that's what's so crazy about this, because I mean, even the conversations on, you know, do we have can Hope make this happen? Do we have a place for this? Does this really happen? You know, after COVID happened, it was like, the conversations were completely different.
And
it's
you
like,
have to.
You have to.
Do it.
Like, we have to think creatively. We have to think outside the box. We have to say, you know, how can we engage with one another? And it's not, I mean, the podcast that we had was, it's just our service. You know, it's just a flat lot, but we're saying, let's go a little bit beyond that and do something. So that's
you've
really
done a great,
the
you know,
birth
it's
of
funny
it.
because you talk about that for yourself, and obviously it seems like when we feel needs for ourselves, those are the places that we can really give, because we can speak to it very directly. But I remember early on, I think this was before you actually did Green Chair, but you did a lot of things where you were talking while walking.
Yes.
And maybe you still do that a lot, and I just haven't known it. But I loved it because it was right out of life, and it's right out of exactly the sorts of things that you were just talking about. Okay. You're seated in the green chair.
I am seated in the green chair.
Okay, so can you tell us some stories about
the green chair?
Yeah, about the green chair.
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm going to tell all these, like the people listen, I'm like, remember that one time you were talking? No, I can't tell these like personal stories. But I was thinking of like, you know, the biggest irony of this whole, I was thinking of how many offices this chair has seen. I have had a lot of offices around here.
Yeah,
a lot of offices. And you know what's so funny?
Because when you first started talking about the whole green chair thing, what I remember is, didn't Jack Kelly, our graphic designer, didn't he have it for a long period of time?
Yes. So I inherited this.
I remember, like, in the communications area, you would walk in and it was like office chair, office chair, office chair, and then the green chair.
Yes. Yeah. So this chair was sitting in the hallway getting ready to get thrown out. So it was getting ready to get thrown out, and I loved it. And I was like, I just had this like regular black office chair, which is fine. And I was like, I love that green chair. And so I go into, which is very ironic now, I go into Kathy Flake's office and I say, Kathy, whose chair is this? And she's like, it's nobody's. Yeah, I think we're getting rid of it. Do you want it? And I was like, yes, I want this green chair. So I take the green chair and I have it in my office. And then, I mean, it was a series of, so the irony behind it is like, it's really kind of funny of just like, to me, it's almost like this like, metaphor of adaptability and flexibility and transitions and being able to kind of like, okay, go with the flow. Yeah. But like, I mean, I just pile up all my stuff in this chair and then I just walk it down the hall and just move into a new
And here,
office and
it's
then move
stayed
here and
with
then move
you
here. Yeah, it stayed with me
all this time.
I
And
mean,
also Jack
I
Kelly,
look
apparently.
ridiculous
Yes.
doing this. Like,
Yes.
I mean, you should see me today bringing this thing over here, like just rolling across
roll
the
it
whole
all
church
around.
with a green chair. I'm like, I was just talking to somebody and I was like, I bet people thought, oh, I guess Jessica's moving offices again. It's been so many.
Nothing
of them.
new.
Yeah,
Nothing new. Right?
nothing
Yeah.
new. Nothing new.
Okay. So this is like very unedited, apparently, right? But you've done. This is the 12th episode, correct?
This is 12.
This is number 12. So
yeah.
you've obviously talked to Kirk Whalum and Effie Johnson and Joe Gilbert, and there's just
so
Rufus
many,
and Eli. You've done.
Yeah.
So out of all of these stories so far, tell me about one or two that really, really resonated with you.
It's like, I feel like it's a really, like, the joke would be like, pick your favorite child, right?
Yeah.
Like, because you get in these conversations with people, and I'm just so hooked, like I love every single one of them, and just each one has a way of just saying, I have left each time, moved and changed and better because of them, truthfully. Because I think just something about hearing people's stories that look or sound different than yours, or even just being challenged by it, is just so like crazy. But if I like the each one, I mean, I'm obviously drawn to the ones that I'm like when Effie's talking about like. She's talking about Joshua 1:9, be bold and courageous, and I'm like, I could use some of that in my life. Like, I need that. And I mean, Craig Thompson talks about getting creative and making pivots and changes, which is exactly what I've always like been doing my entire career, is making pivots and changes. I'm like, I could use some of that, So like every time somebody's talking, I'm like, I like that. I just am learning so much on it. But what's interesting to me is I feel like, as we're having these conversations, there's such a thread of journey, this kind of idea of like, for me, it's just like everybody is on this journey, and it pivots and twists and turns, and it does all these different kinds of things, and it's not ever usually like we expect it to be, which is partially why I love your story.
Yeah.
Because
Okay,
it's not what you thought of.
Can I jump into
Please.
like one verse that's like so when I was growing up, I never understood this verse. It's in Ecclesiastes, and I love Ecclesiastes,
Okay.
right? But the verse is, and I want to make sure I read it right. But
Okay.
It's in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, and it comes kind of out of nowhere. It doesn't really fit into what happened before it or after it, I guess, which is true of Ecclesiastes. There's a lot of that kind of movement.
Yeah.
But the verse is, consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? And when I was younger, I did not understand that. It didn't make any sense to me. But it's honestly, it's exactly the sorts of things that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is a straight line to him.
Yeah.
He's put all of the points together in our lives and kind of brought us to where we're at. And it's not the way it was originally intended or the clarity that we once thought that we had.
Yeah, absolutely.
He took all these little moments and made it perfectly exactly what he wanted them to be.
Yeah.
I love that verse.
That's really, really good.
It's one to grow on. That's right.
I like that.
Yes.
I like that a lot. Because it really is. It feels like it is like everybody just, it's such a journey.
Yes.
It's such a process, and it's such a learning and growing. And you know what's interesting to me too? Is like, no, you don't know.
Tell me.
Yeah,
Tell
I'll
me.
tell you. What's interesting is that, in these people's stories, the places they didn't want to be is ultimately what pivots them to kind of their calling. Like they kind of land in this place that's hard or difficult or complicated or uncomfortable, or they wrestle with this. I can't remember who says it. It's an author, and I should remember, but it's holy discontentment. This idea of like really being discontent with something, and it kind of presses them and pushes them into this place where they're supposed to go the whole time. And I think that's just something I've seen throughout every person's story.
Totally.
So that's a long-winded way.
Okay. Do we have any final thoughts? Any final thoughts that you need to deliver to this wonderful public out there that you're already speaking to, but on this 12th episode?
I guess for me, so I'm considering going to seminary, since we're talking about your seminary journey. So I'm considering going to seminary, and I interviewing and talking to people, trying to figure out, am I actually going to do this whole thing? Am I really going to go to seminary? Is this really even, like, do I need this in my, I'm doing youth ministry, or just got done doing youth ministry at the time. And I call a good friend of mine's mom, because she had gone to Fuller. And she was she's actually one of the only women I knew that went to seminary. And so I called her and wanted her perspective. I'm like, man, Tommy and I just got married a little while ago. At some point, maybe we want a family. Like, what if I get pregnant halfway through seminary? Which is ironic because that was literally that's what happened. And that was literally my like biggest fear is like, what if I have kids in the middle of seminary?
Yeah.
But I'm kind of hashing all this out. What if I get through seminary and then I don't even use my seminary degree? What if like I had all these, like I had a whole big list of like what ifs. And she's like, Jessica, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not so much about the final decision or the end result. It's the journey along the way. And for me, seminary shaped me and made me a better mom. It made me a better wife. It made me a better pastor. I mean, so she kind of laid into this, and that completely changed my perspective. And so instead of it being about yes or no seminary, and then once I made that decision, what is God going to do with this? It was more about, okay, like I'm just not going to try to figure this out. Like I'm just going to go along on this journey, and I'm going to lean into these really weird twists and turns and crooked places that you were talking about. I'm just going to lean into these and say, I'm just going to roll with this because what else am I going to do? Like I literally cannot figure out what's next. And so I guess that's a long or super long-winded way for my final thought really to be just kind of don't try to figure it out. Like I spend so much time trying to figure it out. Yes. Like if we just take it step by step, day by day, and what I keep hearing people saying now is more like moment by moment, because this is a hard time to say. My advice to you is to enjoy the journey because the journey is kind of terrible right now, right? It's like a collective terribleness. And so everybody's going to hate me for saying this, but the point is that like, I think we still have to find like good. Like I just officiated this wedding and this couple had to think totally outside the box. Totally. They wanted to get married in this church, and then they couldn't because of the number of people. And and then they do this like super sweet little thing at this church with just their family, and it was so powerful to me that I just left so impacted by it and thinking, you know, we could worry about how is this all going to play out and what's it going to look like, but we can find moments of intentionality along the way and be able to say, okay, like I can find good here and propel that into my journey and my path. Anyway, so that would be my final. What about you? Beautiful. What would you and I have been having this conversation?
So I've actually been thinking about these sorts of things a lot lately too, and I keep coming back to I think it's in Philippians 2. It says, "Work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act according to His good purpose." And I love that there's sort of two sides to that same story. There's the intentionality on our part. Yeah. To do the things that we feel like we're called to do. Yeah. And then there's that subtext that is all that stuff that's happening under the surface. Yeah. Yeah. That God is literally doing to kind of line things up and make it happen. And then immediately I go to thinking about a surfer. So I think about, because the surfer does the same thing, right? Surfer, like, you know, when you're out there I don't surf, I make it sound like I surf a lot. I have surfed, but I don't surf a lot. But, you know, a surfer, when they're out there, they pick a line, right? They're out there and you're watching the swells and you're watching how it kind of works and you're thinking on your part. And then you pick the moment where you start paddling. But the thing that energizes it and pushes you forward is the energy of the wave. You didn't create the energy in the wave. It was just there. And you picked the line and then you got up and then you rode it. And I think that's sort of, I've been thinking a lot about that concept in life, kind of looking at the different things going on around you and those waves that you can literally ride. You just stand up and get pushed along and really enjoy it, have fun, and try to ride it as best you can and all that good stuff.
So, and fall sometimes.
And
that's okay.
And that's okay.
I think sometimes I am of the type that is afraid of falling. And I don't like it. I don't prefer it. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do the surfing. Perfect. And obviously it's not called the surfing. Clearly I have never surfed. I can talk about boogie boarding. I can't talk about surfing. But I think that's part of it too, is like allowing yourself to like try. And so, hey, thanks.
It's great to hang out with you.
This is fun. The unedited version with Brian Albrecht.
Yes, it's awesome. Well, it's great to be with you. And invite me back. And can you tell me one story about this cactus? Because I'm confused. Why is there a cactus in here?
There has to be, because number one, I have an obsession with them. And number two, remember I told you I moved multiple offices and desks many times. It's literally
the whole time?
books and fake plants. And that one is one that has been with me as well.
Is that fake?
Oh yeah, it's fake.
Oh gosh, I had no idea.
See?
It looked real to me.
It does look real.
I kind of want to grab it just to see if it actually hurts.
Thank you so much again. I so appreciate you doing this. And thank you for asking me questions too. So this was kind of fun for us to have a conversation. Cool. And that is a wrap for our first ever special edition Green Chair conversation with Brian Albrecht. Thank you so much for being connected with us today. Don't forget, you can share today's conversation with a friend or watch any previous conversations at hopechurchmemphis.com/GCC. As well, you can listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast apps. And as always, feel free to email me at greenchair@hopechurchmemphis.com. Love you guys and see ya next week. See ya.